All right, it is 1601 hours.
At noon.
Is this microphone on? Yeah.
It's okay. They're all on, yeah.
Yes. Talk to it. Talk to it. Disability over here.
Okay, it is now 16:02. I call the December 20th, 2018 meeting of the Wolfeboro Police Commission to order. And please ask that everybody stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Before we proceed with business, I'd like to introduce everybody here this afternoon. To my far right, the camera's far left, is our Secretary, Amy Muccio. To my immediate right, Commissioner Ron Goodgame. I am Commissioner Steve Wood. Commissioner Joe Balboni, unfortunately, his plane was 2 hours delayed today, so he'll be arriving late, but he should be joining us before too long. To my immediate left, Chief Dean Rondo, and to his left, Captain Mark Libby. At this time, Commissioner Goodgame, I will entertain a motion on the consideration of the minutes from November 15th.
Are these the public minutes?
The public minutes only, yes, at this point.
I'll make the motion. Approve.
As written. I second the motion. Is there any discussion? Ron, any discussion?
No.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Chief Rondo, if you'd like to...
Before you get to that, are you going to do the non-public minutes now?
We'll do those when we go into non-public.
Because I have some comments and questions on them when you get to it.
Okay, I'm going to do those in the non-public. We'll do those first, though, in non-public. Okay. Chief, if you'd like to proceed with the monthly reports.
I would. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I do have a few items under personnel for non-public session.
Very good.
So, gentlemen, if you look at the first slide in your slide deck, it is arrests, the first chart. And you'll see we were down from November to 15 from a high of October 39. So that's not unusual getting ready to go into the Christmas holiday season. The backup data, if you want to see who was arrested, when and where and what times, all that is provided in the backup material. The next slide in your slide deck is going to be incident cases year to date. And again, you'll see that we were down in November to 35 from 49. Now that's incidents, not total offenses. You'll see the total offenses for the month in the backup data was 41. So that's a 28.57% decrease. Again, typical pattern for this time of year. Traffic stops, 2018 is the next slide in your slide deck, and you'll see that we had a slight increase in November of 29.57, up from October 142 traffic stops. So in November we were at 184 traffic stops. Again, that's typical. November is a heavily trafficked month for people coming to New Hampshire for celebrate Thanksgiving and so forth and so on. So we see a lot more traffic on the road. Also, I know this is Commissioner Goodgame's favorite point of this slide is that we had 8 tickets given out of those 184 stops. And so that amounts to a 4.34% chance of getting a ticket. Again, 4.34% chance of getting a ticket. So it shows what this really reflects is that vast majority of our stops are non-punitive. They are educational and meant to inform the public of what the dangers are. And you'll see the background data in your packet if you want to look at where most of those stops occurred. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the ComStat portion of the briefing. May I go into the Chief's items?
Any questions so far? Well, please continue.
Thank you. Can you folks hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. The command staff conducted 4 internal FY18 budget reviews this past month for November into December. We have now moved to once a week as we get closer to ending our FY 2018 budget. This end of year's budget will be tighter than ever.
Excuse me, Chief. I think it's a paperwork snafu, but we didn't complete the monthlies.
Pardon?
Just the way they fell. We didn't get into collisions or anything like that on the monthlies. We
I can't hear you.
missed collisions and the investigators' report and all that. It fell.
Oh,
This came in, that's just the way it printed off.
all right, I'm sorry.
I just
Yep.
caught that personally.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
It's okay.
Thank you for catching that. The collisions year to date slide were down from 16 to 13. That's an 18.75% decrease. The next slide in your slide deck is going to be the accidents by street name, and you'll see where those are. The monthly activity report for November is included. The detective covered 3 sexual assaults, child abuse cases, 1 felony theft, and 1 misdemeanor theft. Percentage of cases closed this month is 20, and there were no arrests made in any criminal cases this month by the detective. You'll see his summary sheet is also included. And it's important to note that because we've been short-handed, the detective has been pulling some patrol shifts, which accounts for some of that low activity, and that's just unfortunate.
Is that shorthandedness going to alleviate itself?
Yes.
When?
When we hire the Zoom, once the budget has been approved and we get to hire the 14th police officer.
When would you anticipate that?
Sometime in
Hiring.
April, mid-April.
Mid-April?
Mid-April.
Yeah, we also get
Thank you.
Officer Dustin's hours back.
In January, that's right. So part-time officers in this state are limited to approximately 1,300 hours. So once they reach that cap, they can no longer work. I know, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
I guess that's the definition of part-time, huh?
Yeah.
Shame.
Just another hurdle that we have to overcome in getting shifts filled.
But do you anticipate the force to be fully
Stabilized? Yes.
by mid-April?
Mid-April.
Okay.
So lastly, the school resource officer report. This is from Officer Llewellyn. I'll brief this by exception only, but I just do want to point out that he's handling an awful lot of juvenile cases up there, and you'll see that reflected in his report and then his summary down below. And one of the things that he's doing is obviously splitting his time between the school and now the juvenile court, where he's actually prosecuting the juvenile cases. This is something that I think we need to look at in fiscal year 19, and we need to talk about some strategies on how to keep the SRO at the school and how to deal with the plethora of juvenile cases, because Tim Morgan cannot do both. He cannot do adult prosecutions and juvenile prosecutions. He's just too busy.
Is Officer Martineau handling anything?
She's helping. She is helping right now.
He's also helping with investigations.
But you don't anticipate that to continue?
No, this problem is only going to get worse.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, moving on.
Yes, please.
So my executive team delivered our FY19 budget to the Budget Committee on 28 November at 1800 hours in the Great Hall. A second meeting was scheduled for 11 December 2018 to finish this review as we ran out of time at the last meeting. I thought both meetings were productive, and I'm happy to say that the police department budget so far has been approved as we have negotiated with the budget committee, and we stand by to attend the town meeting and the town vote. So more to follow on that. The union contract was signed last night by the Board of Selectmen, and you gentlemen have that contract in front of you right now, and I hope you take a look at that and go ahead and sign that so we can get that turned back into the town. Under personnel, the captain and I attended the fiscal year 18 New Hampshire Highway Safety Conference. This conference helps to set forth the state's and federal government's strategy for highway safety each year. Of significant concern for our nation's road this year are the increase in traffic fatalities in general and the increasing number of drugged drivers on our state and federal roadways. In states where marijuana has been made legal, they are realizing significant increases in DWI drugs, most principally marijuana. This remains a significant concern in New Hampshire here as well. And you gentlemen, I think, saw two press releases that were sent out recently where we made 2 arrests here in Wolfeboro, both DWI drug-related offenses. One was actually a DWI drug marijuana crash on
Elm Street.
Pine Street at 35 Elm Street. Vehicle failed to negotiate that turn and crashed into the embankment there at 35 Elm Street. And that driver was found to be impaired on marijuana. So this is a significant concern, not just in the nation, but here in Wolfeboro. And I have a lot of concerns about this, and this is only going to get worse as the proliferation of marijuana continues.
Chief, just as an educational point, I was watching this program the other night on television, and it was making the point that if marijuana is legal in a state, but is illegal in this state, and it was medical marijuana that was prescribed, let's say in California, and that person then brings the marijuana into New Hampshire and ingests the marijuana where it's illegal in New Hampshire, that overrides the legality of having been prescribed in California, correct?
That's correct. That is correct.
I think a lot of people don't really understand that. They think if it's legal where they are given the prescription, it's legal all over.
So the first thing I want to clarify is some language that you're using in this, and it's a very interesting point. I just had this discussion the other day. First of all, marijuana is not prescribed. Okay, you don't go to a doctor and get a prescription for it. All right, and I think a lot of people don't understand that either. Okay, the way this works, all right, and let's take the first issue, right? You're going to say, well, why can't a doctor prescribe it, right? That's going to be your question. How come a doctor can't prescribe it? Can you ask that question?
Because it's federally outlawed?
Because it's what?
Outlawed federally?
That's correct. That is exactly 100% correct. It's a Schedule I drug. It's against federal law. You can't ask a physician to prescribe something that is outlawed, right? He'll lose his or her medical license. You can't do it. What you do is go to a doctor and you get a recommendation for medical marijuana, right, in this particular case. And then you take that recommendation to one of these medical marijuana clinics, which you go in and then you say, I stubbed my toe and the only thing that's going to work is marijuana, or I have this recommendation from my doctor, and then they take you through what they think you're going to need for marijuana. The whole thing smacks of voodoo witchcraft. All right, the marijuana it's varying consistencies and varying THC content, and the interesting thing is the beneficial part, and this is again something else that people don't understand. The beneficial part to marijuana is not the THC. It's not the THC, right? It's the oil. It's the that's why you see a lot of this about the the marijuana oil, right? That's what alleviates nausea. That's what helps reduce inflammation and so forth and so on. That's why people consume it, okay? But these medical marijuana clinics are making these, or developing these more and more potent THC concentrate extracts in marijuana, right? So the whole thing, I know, may seem complicated, but to me, this whole thing is just a ruse. It's a ruse to get around the federal schedule. But you don't go to the important point is you don't go to a doctor to get a prescription. If you go to Huggins Hospital right now and you try to get a prescription for marijuana, the doctor says, I can't give you a prescription for marijuana. I can give you a recommendation. The two are not the same. All right, and you don't go to a pharmacy to get.
So medical marijuana is legal in New Hampshire?
Say again?
Medical marijuana is legal in New Hampshire?
Yes.
Huh.
Yes. You got to have a card. You got to have a note from your doctor. There's some other requirements. You can only have so much of it. And see, that's the other goofy thing about this, right? When you have medicine, typically, absent those of us that have to take our medicine with food, you know, so if we're going to go out to breakfast or lunch or whatever, we probably take a pill or two with us and we put it in our pocket. Okay, a good example of this might be Motrin, right? You're taking Motrin to reduce inflammation. You don't want to take that on an empty stomach, right? And there's a lot of medicines like that that you have to take with food or drink in order for it to get into the system. But for most of us, if you're suffering some sort of illness or malady and you require to take medicine, like high blood pressure pills, you take those in the morning or you take those in the evening or whatever, okay? You don't take them with you in your pocket, in your automobile, on your everyday business, all right? You take them once in the morning and once, see, and that's what's goofy about this, right? You know, why, if you need marijuana, medical marijuana to reduce anxiety, why do you have to have it with you all the time? The whole thing is just hogwash as far as I'm concerned.
I think something too that folks don't understand is, like alcohol that is legal in every state, okay? If you consume too much alcohol and get behind the wheel of a motor vehicle and you're found to be under the influence of alcohol while operating, you're going to pay the price. The same holds true for marijuana, whether it's legal in your state or not. You still can't operate under the influence.
So that gets to be another interesting point, right? So, and we just saw this with the town worker that was injured in the that terrible motor vehicle crash that occurred on Beach Pond Road a year ago. That driver was under the influence of an intoxicating drug and a drug of impairment. It was prescribed to her by a physician. She was taking the recommended therapeutic dose of that drug, but she was behind the wheel of a car. It was just unfortunate. It was a really, really bad choice on her part. And the defense in court was, well, it was prescribed by a doctor. Well, yeah, okay. We're not charging you for having the drug in your possession. We're charging you because you were drunk on the drug behind the wheel. You were impaired, okay? And as the commissioner chairman just brought up, just because it's legal doesn't mean you can drive impaired on it. And that's an important distinction, and that's what many people forget. And that is an important point.
Okay.
Such a drama queen.
I could go on for hours.
We know.
Okay, so under operations, this month, 31 defendants responded to 33 charges. Of those 33 charges, 22 individuals were found or pled guilty. One charge was withdrawn as the defendant agreed to enter into a residential rehab facility, and 10 were placed on file pending good behavior for 6 months or more with diversion, education, and restitution components added to their sentences. The conviction rate this month is 99%, with approximately $6,092 in fines, penalties, and restitution meted out. Last month, we received word that all our operational grants have been approved through New Hampshire Highway Safety. We did not receive the grant for technical crash investigation equipment and supplies, so as a result, I have removed those matching funds of $1,000 from our FY19 appropriation request. We did receive monies for our requested MDT grants. Our patrols have begun in F9 and will continue into FY19 and will continue through 15 September 2019. Our FY19 budget appropriation paperwork has been updated to reflect these changes. I have directed that our radar trailer and accompanying radar warning signs be pulled in for the winter months to avoid damage to these very delicate and sensitive instruments. They will reappear next spring. Speed issues continue to be a problem in our community. Please pay attention to the posted speed limits on our town road. Speed complaints represent some of the most common quality of life issues we receive at the PD. Please be courteous of your friends and neighbors and don't speed. We will be monitoring our roads very carefully. If you are speeding, please slow down. Thank you. That being said, the department is continuing its enhanced speed enforcement operations in the following areas: Forest Road, Cotton Valley Road, College Road areas, Beach Pond Road with a focus on the area between Pine Hill Road and North Line Road, Center Street, North Main Street, 109 East, and Sewell Road. The reason for these speed enforcement operations is due to citizen complaints and data collected and analyzed by our radar trailer. We will continue our efforts in these areas until we are sure that the speeds have come down. If you travel these roads, please be mindful of the speed limits. Training. Police Sergeant Randy Archibald and Sergeant Guy Maloney completed secure training at Huggins Hospital this past month. Dispatcher Heather Caligandes completed Wolfeboro Field Training Officer and Spots training this month, and she's now working in that permanent part-time position.
What is secure training?
So secure training is how Huggins Hospital is going to conduct lockdown procedures in case they have an active shooter or some other threat to the faculty, staff, and patients at the hospital.
Okay, thanks.
Budget. The next FY19 review will be at the 17 January 2019 Budget Commission meeting, as changes are still being made to the budgets. I will address any questions the commissioners have on this matter at that time. Of the FY18 or FY19 budgets, I am hopeful that by this time all our remaining questions should be answered. The next FY18 budget review will be immediately following this presentation, and the next FY19 budget review will be on 17 January 2019 at the Commission meeting. Outreach and matters of interest. The captain and I spoke on Wolfeboro Community TV this past month. The captain and I continue to be regulars at the men's breakfast meetings each month. Both the captain and I continue to be a presence at the BOSS meetings, the CIP meetings, and other town committees as requested. I continue to serve on both the Governor's Committee for the Humane and Ethical Treatment of Animals and serve on Senator Bradley's legislative committee seeking to strengthen the state's animal cruelty laws. And both of those have just started up in earnest again for this legislative session. The captain continues to be part of the master planning process and the technical review and joint loss committees. I continue to serve on the Emergency Preparedness Committee, and I'm happy to report the plan has been updated and is now online.
What is the joint loss committee?
The what?
Joint loss committee?
It's basically to go over procedures with the town for anything, injuries, and prepare policies a little bit better than what they are. Changing them up.
Does that have something to do with insurance?
Yes.
Yes.
We work with Primex with that.
Okay, thanks.
So lastly, please be our guest on Coffee and Connections with the Chief. This Wolfeboro TV community show entails the captain and I and other members of our department meeting and speaking with various groups or individuals on Wolfeboro Community TV at local area venues while discussing various community topics of interest. If you would like to be on TV or want to have us come down to your group or area, simply contact Peter or Tim at Wolfeboro Community TV and be part of Coffee and Connections with the Chief. Also, please please tune in to our very own WASR on 1420 on your AM dial for our monthly podcast to catch up on topics of interest and matters of importance. Soon the public will be able to call in and take part of the radio show, and that should be very exciting. And here is your safety tip of the month. Like it or not, we are definitely into the winter months. Now take heed of the weather. Ensure your motor vehicles are prepared for the cold weather and poor road conditions by ensuring that you have the proper tires on your vehicles, windshield washer fluid in your cars, and don't travel during winter storm advisories unless absolutely necessary. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to the captain here in a moment. I just want to let everybody know, watching this right now, that we do have some bad weather coming in tomorrow, and we're starting tonight and going into tomorrow and Saturday, so it should be awfully wet. So be careful out there, Captain.
Can I ask you one other question? I noticed that some of the surrounding communities have had problems with people deciding that the ice is thick enough to get out for ice fishing. Have we had any calls for rescues of people out on the ice?
No.
Okay.
All right. A few items that we've done this, actually some in November and some in December, to go on to your subject that you've mentioned in the previous commissioners' meetings, is about working with the schools and lockdowns and training up there. In November, with Crescent Lake, we did a lockdown, an unannounced lockdown, which actually went very well up at that school. When I say unannounced, the teachers and the kids were unaware of it, which is, once you get to that stage, it's a very, to see how they actually do in those conditions. I would say less than 30 seconds, it was quiet. There was nobody in that hallway. It was done very well. I make sure that I try to get up on all of those lockdowns. Officer Llewellyn also assisted with Sergeant Archibald, was up there. On December 3rd, we actually, Officer Llewellyn and myself, after school, so it was around 3:45, we met with all the teachers up at Crescent Lake, the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, and answered all their questions concerning about lockdowns. I believe it went very well. It was about an hour and a half or so. It was a good talk, especially got their concerns out and let them know what our plan is as we do lockdowns and as we enter the building, exactly what our basically operation is, somewhat of our operation. So they understand our goals as we enter these lockdowns. On December 6th, we actually did a lockdown at the Wolfeboro Area Creative Children's Center. That's our second one we've done with them. That went very well. Also, it's nice to use those schools too, as the same thing as the high schools and Crescent Lakes and Kingswood, the whole complex. On December 8th, we did 2 lockdowns, one at the high school in the morning, and also a lockdown up at the middle school in the afternoon. Both of those were unannounced as far as I can remember. There's so many at one time. The interesting part at the middle school, they timed it perfectly during passing of the classes. So it actually went really well to get everybody. So it's a little different than their normal sitting in classrooms or lunchtime or something like that, but during their time.
Is there a plan in place, or is there a idea formulated, a plan formulated, knowing the layout of the schools, specifically the middle school and the high school are joined, and you can easily pass through both?
You can pass through.
So
each one,
the actual lockdown situation, would both schools would be affected?
they would be effective. Those are things we're still working on. Communication through each schools, actually throughout the district. When one school goes down, pretty much in a lockdown, they all should be going down, and they all should have the communications. So each lockdown, we learn new stuff, and we go over with the staff of the administration after each lockdown, go over the goods and the bads of the lockdown. So it actually works really well. So also, after, are you familiar with the incident over at Brewster Academy we had on December 10th?
Yes.
We actually got a letter from Brewster Academy I'd like to read. It was actually from Kevin Duffy, who's the manager of facilities operations and security and life safety officer over there. So the letter was given out to the police department, just basically saying thank you for your agency's response to Brewster campus on Monday, December 10th, 2018. It was reassuring to see the immediate, effective, and collaborative response by members of your agency to ensure our Brewster community remains safe. Time and time again, we have come to appreciate the professional police response from the Wolfeboro Police Department. Last Monday's response was anything but routine, and yet one could not help but be impressed with every officer's dedication, professionalism, and cordial demeanor towards our students, staff, and faculty. Faced with activating our own emergency protocols, it was difficult to identify every Wolfeboro police officer on scene. Could you please ensure the copy of the memorandum gets into each responding officer's personal file? So it's nice to get these letters, and they were very, how do you put it, basically happy of our response, especially, I mean, with all the surrounding towns assisting us.
Well, I had heard that they were not only happy with the way things went, they were quite impressed with the coordination, professionalism, and the way that it was actually the entire process was accomplished. So
A lot of these things we do in the training, and actually when these calls do come forward, it's nice to see everything work out good.
thank you, Captain. Okay, we do not have a
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, can I just go into a very quick review of the FY18 budget?
You may.
Thank you, thank you, sir.
Wasn't on my agenda, so I didn't.
So, yeah, I because I had Amy put it on the agenda, I thought it was important to go over it because we did postpone it, I think, from last month. So, what I'd like to do is, if you take a look at the police appropriation report for fiscal year 18, that's a 2-page report, and if you go to the bottom line of that, and it'll say total general fund, talking about the general fund of the police department. If you look on the bottom of that, you're going to see that we're at 94% expent, right? 94 and change. We should be at 96% expent. So what does that really mean? That means we're about right now we're 2%. We have 2% surplus. Yes, sir.
Hey, Chief, I'm having trouble following this thing. I've got 2 reports here.
You want the bottom of you want page?
Okay, so the
What's
first
the difference between the 2?
Okay, so the first report is a 2-page report. It looks like this. On the second page, go to the second page of that.
But what is this first 2 pages? It's like police
It's the police department.
That's the police department. That's the police department proper.
And the second one is dispatch?
No, the second page of that is still the continuation of the police department.
I'm sorry, I mean the second form.
Then the second form will be dispatch.
Okay.
Amy, can you help them? And the third form will be animal control.
I didn't see dispatch anywhere. So that was okay, thanks.
Okay, so if you look at the far right-hand column, that shows percent used. If you go down to the very bottom of it, you're going to see that we're at 94 and change percent spent. Actually, 94.1% spent if you want to round up. We should be at 96. So what that really means is that we have 2% of our budget right now, approximately 2%, it's just a little bit south of that, as surplus. So that's a good position to be in, okay? That means we're healthy, okay? You're giving me a deer in a headlamp look. Are you tracking, Commissioner?
I'm with you.
Okay, good. So the bad news is, and the reason I brought you gentlemen beer glasses today, so Merry Christmas, is because it'll make the bad news go down a little bit smoother, is that we're about 1%, just a little south of that, 1% overspent in the dispatch budget, okay? So we're gonna probably overexpend that budget by somewhere between $1,000 and $3,000. Now, let me explain why that is. Really two reasons. One, we had a lot of turnover in the part-time dispatch arena. We rely very heavily on our part-time dispatchers to cover open shifts and to provide additional help. That was the reason we wanted that additional $6,000 this year into the and we added that into the FY19 appropriation so we can help address this this overage. The second issue is that from the past administration, there was a personnel decision that became grandfathered by past practice that was not budgeted for, so that consumed some additional money that wasn't programmed. Now that has been fixed moving forward in the contract, the union contract that you gentlemen just signed. So the good news is, even though we dealt with this problem this year, it's fixed moving into fiscal year 19. Now, the other good news is that I have more than enough money in the surplus of the police department budget to cover the overage in dispatch, so there's no issues there. All right, so that's an important thing. Yes, sir.
I'm just confused because you said that dispatch is 1% overspent, but when I look at the bottom line, it says you're at 96%. Is this that number?
Right, so if that's correct, that's right now. So if you look at dispatch right now, we're at 96.094% spent. So essentially we're 0.094% overspent in dispatch. We should be 96% even.
Okay.
All right, so we're showing an overexpenditure of 0.094%. All right, so it's not terribly bad news by any stretch of the imagination, but it is an over expenditure, and I need to report it to you.
Is this last page animal control?
Animal control, and you'll see we're about 10% underspent in animal control. So that too will help balance out, if you will, central dispatch, most likely. The animal control budgets are actually a very small budget, about $25,000 or so, or yeah, $24,030. So we're about 10% underspent in that budget. So that's more than that's going to more than wash the dispatch over expenditure, and what doesn't get washed by the animal control budget will certainly be taken care of by the surplus in the police budget.
Where are we now? The paper that I have says as of December 2018. When was this generated, or how current is it?
Today.
Today. Okay, so this is very current. So basically,
The date, yeah, the date's in the upper left-hand corner.
oh, my bad. Sorry.
Yep, I had Sherry run those today.
Okay.
So, gentlemen, subject to your questions, that's really all I have.
Okay.
You know, I'm confused.
Non-public.
You like to use the word surplus.
Say again?
You like to use the word surplus. If the department has a surplus,
Yes.
why wouldn't the budget committee be correct in reducing the appropriation for the department to eliminate that surplus so that you don't have a surplus each year?
No, you have a surplus. Surplus is the right word, but you have a surplus for a whole bunch of different reasons.
Ours is basically our hourly rate.
What really you're saying, I think, that's misunderstood by the budget committee and others sometimes, is that you two are responsible for the management of the department.
Right.
And you make a decision from time to time whether or not you want to expend all, none, or in excess of a certain line item. Correct?
That's correct.
And depending on how you manage it on a particular year or a particular quarter, you may end up with some unspent funds.
That's correct. I will tell you that most years, almost all years, every year that I've been in the administration, I've been in the administration now either as the second in command or as the chief. Every year that I've been in the administration, there has been a surplus at the end of the year. There typically always will be. When you think about it, and the reason that is actually quite simple, right? We're managing approximately $2.5 million, right? That's a lot of money. So things happen throughout the course of the year that will result in a savings, right? Because that's what we're really talking about, right? We have a savings. So let me.
That's my point.
Right. Let me give you some examples.
Just made.
Right. Let me give you some examples of that, which you just can't forecast from year to year. You know, retirements. No matter how you try to plan for retirements, it's completely up to the 35 or so people that work for the Wolfeboro Police Department in its, larger form, right? The police department's made up of, Wolfeboro Central Dispatch, it's made up of the police department proper, animal control, and of course the police commission, right? So if we have somebody that gets done, that retires, leaves to go on to greener pastures, and that person is a senior person like Sergeant Scott Moore, right, who retired this year, and then we hire, so now he's vacated, and then you gentlemen hire a new officer, Christine Martineau. She's not coming in at sergeant salary, so there's a savings there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And the savings resonates throughout the entire budget, right? So think of it like this: it's just not the salary, right? But it's going to resonate in retirement, right? Because your retirement costs are now lower, your FICA costs are now lower, your workers' compensation is the same, but the various line items get lower and lower. Health insurance goes from a 2-person to a 1-person, for example. So the savings resonate all the way through the budget. Another good one, although this year went the other way, but last year we had a huge savings in gasoline and oil because gasoline prices dropped. When gasoline prices drop, and we've budgeted for, a set number of hundreds of thousands of gallons of fuel for the course of the year, and then that price drops, well, that generates a savings, right? So these things happen, and things like this happen all the time. There's always going to be somewhat of a surplus. So that's common. So if somebody would say, well, we're just going to reduce you by $60,000, well, that wouldn't be wise. Because when we budget at the beginning of the year, right, so for the fiscal year 19 appropriation, we budget, everything is budgeted right down to the last penny. That we know how much salaries are going to be, we know how much that retirement's going to cost, we know how much fuel we're going to use, we know what we have the 5-year average on repair parts and maintenance for the cruisers, so we can anticipate, as best we can what our costs are going to be.
I got to tell you, after attending that budget committee meeting and whatnot, I think you don't get enough credit for.
Well, thank you.
For prudent asset management, which results in sometimes a savings, depending on the contingencies and depending on the exigencies and whatever happened during the year, some of which you have control over and some of which you don't have control over. I guess my objection really is semantics. I kind of object to your use of the word surplus, because I think by using surplus, you're not giving yourself credit.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up. I'm trying to use, when I describe the budget, and we talk in terms of revenue and surplus, I'm trying to use doctrinally correct language, which is the language an accountant or a CPA or a budgeteer would use. Because, obviously words have meaning. No one knows that better than you, being a former, well, not a former attorney, but former general counsel. You know that. And so I'm trying to use the doctrinally correct word. In this particular case, that is. I understand what you're saying, though. It could be misinterpreted by saying, oh, they have a surplus, they have excess money, they have a slush fund. No, that's not what this is. This is just
like a bouncing Betty mine. Yeah.
It is what it really is. And Pete Chamberlain said it the best one year when I think somebody said the same thing to him. He said, no, what it really is, he said surplus is what we all understand the word surplus, but he said what you really have is an unexpended appropriation from fiscal year 18. And that's a correct, that's
much better than surplus. That's much better than surplus.
Right. That's a tongue twister to say, but that's actually what it is. So right now we're realizing approximately a 2% savings in an unexpended fiscal year 18 appropriation is the best way to put it. So yes, it is an unused appropriation from fiscal year 18. That's exactly what it is. And at the end of the day, just so to tie the loop nice and tight, what happens with that money, let's just assume it's going to be about $60,000. It'll be in that neighborhood somewhere, a little bit north, a little bit south of that. That will go into the general fund, and that then gets calculated and then comes off next year's amount of money that the town has to raise. So typically, in years past, the town usually experiences, because other departments will have this too. They'll have, dribs and drabs that come in from the previous year's appropriation, and it'll be about $1.2 million. It might be, a little bit less than that. It might be 800,000, but it'll be in that neighborhood, somewhere in that neighborhood. And the town's budget, I think, I don't want to say what the town's budget is going to be. I don't know, but let's just assume it's $27 million. And if the town has $1 million in unexpended fiscal year 18 appropriation, say that 5 times fast, then that $1 million would come off that. So instead of having to raise $27 million, now you just have to raise $26 million.
Just trust me, from the layman's standpoint, the word surplus is loaded.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. I'll try and work on a better vernacular to describe it, but really what it is an unexpended appropriation.
Yeah, I mean, give yourself some credit.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
And the captain, too.
Yeah, and it's
you guys do a great job.
Yeah, and I just want, while I'm at it, thank you for recognizing that the captain does a phenomenal job and spends a lot of time in the budget and a lot of time helping me control not just the growth of the budget, but the expenditure of the budget and making sure that we're doing everything fiscally correct and fiscally responsible. So I do appreciate you bringing that up. I think we have been able to do an awful lot with the amount of money that we've been granted by the citizenry, and I'm very, very happy, one, for their support, two, for your support, and I think we're doing well. And I think the fiscal year 19 budget, which I'm very proud of, I think goes a long way to fixing a number of systemic problems. And what I like about that budget most of all is that we were able to use a lot of different funding sources and revenues that were coming in from other sources to do what we needed done. A good example would be the police special detail account, which will be in a warrant article in the budget. So we had some grant money and we had some revenues that come in from other sources that were put against expenses to do what we need to do, which is great because it's a zero. When you do that, it's a zero impact on the taxpayer, zero impact.
All right, I'm going to insert myself here. We do have a pretty lofty non-public to get.
Yes, we do.
Do you have any other questions, Commissioner Goodgame?
No.
Okay. There is no Board of Selectmen's rep here tonight. Anything, sir? Okay. Well, at this time, then, I'll entertain a motion to enter non-public session under RSA 91-A3, paragraph B. Do I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion.
Good night, Lenny.
A motion made. I'll second that motion. Now poll the commission. Commissioner Goodgame?
Aye.
Aye. And Commissioner Wood, yes. We now stand in non-public session. We'll take a short recess.